Welcome to your 20-minute yoga practice today. Here we're focusing on releasing through the hamstrings and the glutes. We'll begin by standing at the top of the mat. You might wish to have your hands in a prayer position, and if you're comfortable, you could close those eyes. You can just begin by focusing on the breath, allowing all of the breath out of the body. And then as you begin to breathe in, making sure you allow your chest to expand as well as the belly. And breathing all the way out again with the awareness on the breath. Continuing to breathe in this way for another breath or two. Setting an intention for yourself. And on the next breath, you can take a nice deep breath in, reaching the arms up overhead. As you take a forward fold, allowing those arms to release downward, relaxing through the head and neck. You could even take your hands behind the lower legs and use that as a little bit of leverage to help you fold slightly deeper. There's no need to force anything. Taking a little twist now, taking that right hand to the opposite ankle, inhaling as you lift the left. A breath or so here. And then as you exhale, taking that lifted hand and bringing it down to the opposite ankle, inhaling to open that twist to the other side. Breathing out as you bring the hand back down into the fold. We'll inhale for a halfway lift. As you next exhale, you can fold again. And breathe in as you stand all the way up. We'll come straight back down into a forward fold. Another half lift before bringing the hands back to the mat so you can step back into a plank. Breathing here, making sure you're not lowering the hips too low and not lifting those hips too high as we then transition into downward facing dog. Relaxing into this shape, taking the time to pedal out the legs, stretching through the calves and hamstrings. We're taking a twist here as you reach that right hand over to the opposite leg for a breath or two. And then just doing that gently on the other side with the left hand reaching through to the right leg. Returning to downward facing dog. Getting ready to step that right foot to the front of the mat now in a nice low, long lunge. Noticing that the back knee is a lot further back than the hip. We're getting some stretch there in the hip flexor on that other leg. Chest is lifted. Breathing here. Now we can just extend that front leg, straightening it out a little. You might bring the hands back a little to support you. Notice that the toes are still planted on the mat, and it's okay if this leg is not completely straight. We'll now return the hands to the top of the mat and actually take a twist, lifting that right arm up, gazing over to the side. On the exhale, bringing that hand back down, lifting the back knee and stepping to the top of the mat into a forward fold. You'll inhale as you reach the arms up, stand up. Exhale to fold again. Hands to the mat and then taking that half lift with a little breath in. Stepping back to plank once again. Breathing here. And then lifting those hips. Returning to that inverted V position. Downward facing dog. Fingers are spread wide. Gazing between the legs. Taking that left foot this time to the top of the mat. Inhaling for the lunge. Breathing here. Option to have that back knee lifted or lowered. Lowering it now so that you can release into that stretch, straightening through the front leg. Breathing here. You can take a bend through that left leg now as you reach the hands to the top of the mat, inhaling that left arm up to find a twist. As you exhale, bringing the hand back down, gazing forward, you can lift the back knee to step to the top of the mat in a forward fold. Again, we inhale as we come up and exhale to fold. Breathing in for that half lift so that you can step back to plank again. Downward facing dog. We're going to inhale now as we lift that right leg up to the sky briefly before bringing ourselves into the pigeon shape. Now we're staying here for a while, and it's all about using those slow, deep breaths into the belly to show your body that it's safe as you release into this stretch. Checking in on your positioning here. This front leg, the knee is in line with the hip. The back leg is centered behind you. And after another breath or so, you might bring those hands a little further forward, maybe bringing the forearms down. We're going to stay here for a few breaths before progressing even further downward. Now again, if you're checking in with your positioning, the hip will be slightly lifted on that bent leg. And it's just important to make sure that you're just bringing yourself to the edge of the stretch and not pushing through any pain. Reaching the arms even further forward if that's available to you. There's no expectation that you need to reach all of this way. We're going to spend extra time here, taking a few breaths, releasing through the glutes. That's it. When you're ready to come out of this shape, just take your time to bring your hands either side of the knee and then step back to that plank. In your own time, lifting the hips to downward facing dog. When you're ready, inhaling to lift the left leg this time as we come into pigeon on the other side. Another view of this pigeon shape for you to check in with your positioning. You'll see that the lower leg of the bent front leg is angled out slightly. You can increase the intensity by bringing the shin a little higher. However, just make sure this doesn't cause any issues with the knee. It doesn't need to be too high at all. You'll be bringing those forearms down to the floor if that's available to you. Remembering you can stay in the lifted pigeon position if that's helping work into the glute muscles for you. The slow breaths down into the belly are what shows the body that you're safe, that it is safe for those muscles to release. And you might find that it is an option to release even further, bringing those arms a little further away from you and the head, perhaps to the mat, or even resting on the forearms. A few more breaths here. Beautiful. Preparing to come out of this position once again. When you're ready to do that, bringing those hands to the mat, lifting the chest. Next, for fun, we'll come to a seated position by bringing that back leg to the front. You're whipping it all the way around and over that front knee. And then you can hug the top leg as you twist. Supporting yourself with that right hand behind you. And then we'll just swap the legs over to experience that twist on the other side. Keeping the chest lifted, the shoulder blade pulled back on that arm behind you. One more breath here. And then we'll slowly unravel, just coming to a neutral seated position. And then bringing the feet together in front of you. This is butterfly. Now, holding the hands around the feet if that's available to you, otherwise you can take hold of the ankles. Sitting tall. If there's any discomfort in the knees, you can allow them to be a little more lifted. After a couple more breaths, we will lean a little more forward into this position. So just transitioning into that forward leaning variation of butterfly. You could use the grip around the feet as a little bit of leverage to pull yourself forward. It's okay if that's just an incremental lean. You might feel this through the glutes, but you'll also feel this through the inner thighs. After your next breath, you can just return to a neutral seated position, maybe crossing those legs in a comfortable way. I'm going to come to a stretch through the shoulder blades by extending both arms out in front. I'd like you to cross that right elbow over the left, wrapping the hands around each other in this twisted position. If this looks a little too complicated, there is an option here just to bring the opposite hands to each opposite shoulder in front of you. As you inhale, you can release. We'll try this on the other side again, reaching both hands out, this time with the left elbow over top and that twisted eagle arms. We're thinking of lifting the elbows and pressing them away from you to really accentuate that release through the shoulders. Unraveling the arms when you're ready. Taking a deep breath in. And we'll just roll over those crossed legs and into a neutral kneeling position. We will release down into a relaxed child's position. You can see here that I am taking a few breaths in puppy first, which is where we still have our toes tucked, our hips a little higher, pressing toward the mat. I'll be transitioning into that child's position now. So if you're already there, you can just stay there. Deep breaths down into the belly. Being present and still. On the next exhale, you can walk both hands over to the right side. You'll feel a little stretch down the left side of the body. So as you breathe deeply, you could breathe into this stretch. On the next exhale, walking the hands toward the center again, and then over to the other side. Feeling that stretch this time down the right side of the body. Breathing. Returning to center when you're ready. And then moving through kneeling, we're transitioning to a toe stretch. Now, if this isn't for you and doesn't feel quite right, you're welcome to remain kneeling as we won't be here for long. You'll see that I have taken a crouching position, balancing on the toes. This might feel a little strong through the feet for some. And then the hands can come back to the mat. We weren't there for long, were we? Moving now to a more neutral kneeling position. I'll just turn to show you this stretch through the chest and shoulders from the back side. There's no need for you to move. Inhaling to stretch the arms either side, bending at the elbows. The right arm comes down and the left arm comes up. Hands are reaching for each other behind the back. Now, we haven't warmed up much for this stretch, so I wouldn't expect those hands to come together for everybody. We'll transition to the other side. You might find the mobility on one side quite different to the other. Keeping that chest lifted and that head held high. Releasing here. Clasping those hands behind you now and lifting the chest. Now lifting the hands as you bring the head to the mat. An option here to lift the hips and bring the crown of the head to the mat. However, this is not required. You don't want too much pressure on the head. Coming back to seated now. Inhaling to reach the arms up overhead. Exhaling to release. Taking your time to transfer to a neutral kneeling position, stepping back through plank and up to downward facing dog. A couple of slow breaths in this position to recenter. Stepping that right foot forward between the legs once again for a nice long lunge, dropping that back knee and returning to the stretch through the front leg by straightening through that leg. This time playing with lifting the toes slightly, seeing if that stretches into a different part of the hamstring. We'll contrast this now with the other variation, bringing the foot flat to the mat and then trying to return to that straighter leg position. You'll find perhaps that you'll maintain a little more of a bend in this variation and that the stretch will hit a different part of the hamstring. We'll transition to the other side by stepping through plank and into the lunge with the left leg forward this time. Again, beginning with the toe lifted variation, stretching through that extended leg, and then transitioning into the foot planted variation. Just noticing what feels different. Breathing. Coming out of this when you're ready and transitioning into an extended child's position. A little stillness. Next, you can unravel from this and come down to lying on your front, placing the arms either side of you with elbows bent at right angles. We're taking a twist that's going to bring a stretch through that right shoulder. So you'll see that I have pressed the floor away with the left hand, keeping the right arm where it is. You might see I've also used that top leg as a little bit of extra leverage. And you can transition now to the other side. Apologies, when I recorded this, I whipped through that transition pretty quickly and didn't leave much time to articulate how to do that. Okay, returning to neutral, bringing the hands either side of the shoulders and just lifting yourself off the ground through kneeling and then coming to seated. Preparing for a seated forward fold, bending that right knee, bringing the sole of the foot into the thigh of the opposite leg, inhaling the arms up overhead and exhaling to fold over that extended leg. You'll reach the hands towards the foot. They could come to rest either around the foot or toes, or perhaps resting on the ankle or shin. No comparisons. Using each exhale as an opportunity to release even deeper into this stretch, maybe with the eyes closed down. Releasing when you're ready. We'll just exchange legs, so bending through that left knee this time. Inhaling as you lift the arms up overhead, exhaling to fold. Breathe. Slowing that breath down now. Noticing if you're breathing down into the belly. Releasing when you're ready. Just take one last seated forward fold with both legs extended this time. Again, allowing the hands to rest where they may lie. If you have any struggles with seated forward fold, I encourage you to take a block or a folded blanket and place it beneath the buttocks so that you're elevating the hips slightly. Releasing this fold when you're ready. We'll transition to laying on the back, knees bent, drawing them in toward the chest for a knee hug. And we're going to take a little twist to release through the low back, bringing the arms either side with those knees lifted. Allow both knees to gently drop toward the right side. Your head might turn slightly the opposite direction. And then we'll transition from here, inhaling to bring those knees back through center. And another hug. You might even bring the forehead up to the knees this time. Releasing the arms back either side so that you can take that twist to the left side this time. Breathing. Never pushing through pain. If this is uncomfortable for you, don't allow the twist to deepen this far. You might even like to remain in the knee hug. Transitioning out of this twist, hugging those knees once again. And then releasing the legs to the mat. Resting in Shavasana. Maybe with one hand to the belly, the other to the chest or by your side. Returning to the breath. Now, in a moment, I'll be leaving you, but I encourage you to stay here in Shavasana for 2 to 3 minutes, or as long as you'd like.